Hello and welcome to another edition of Cadence Fishing TV. Today we're at Woodland Lakes near Thirsk, and we're after carp. And I've got my first one on now, which is giving me a right test. Oh, I'll get back to you in a second. There we go, got him under control now, I think. Makes a change from my usual fishing, but I'm really looking forward to today. And of course, putting the CP 2000 pole to the test with some of these big lumps that live in here. And it looks a good one for our first fish. And that's fun. Hook out in the net, that's handy. If you'll just lie still, I might be able to show you this one, with it being our first. And there you go, our first fish of the day. Well, we've come to Woodland Lakes. It's school holidays have just nicely started. It's beginning of August. As you probably know, we've had some red hot weather a couple of weeks ago, and then we've had torrential rain these last few days. Well, the last week really, and that's why we're here today really. One, I want to test this pole out on some proper fish, and two, I've had a bit of a rough time this last weekend on the rivers with them being up, and I want to catch some fish. So we've come here today. We're on Curlew, one of the smaller back lakes. I've been told we should get some action, and as you've just seen, 10 minutes in and I've had one. So I'm really excited about fishing here today. The conditions we've got here today are really ideal for fishing in general, really, on a still water. It's overcast. We've got a nice little breeze on, which is giving us a ripple, which means I can fish reasonably close in. The water's coloured because the fish are feeding. Now we're in the middle of the summer. It's just absolutely perfect. It's nice and warm. Not blazing hot, warm enough to be sat out in the t-shirt, so it's just absolutely perfect day for fishing today. My tactics today is pretty typical on a well-stocked commercial fishery, especially a match venue, and they are to fish what we call top 2 and 2 really, and I'm fishing just before it gets a little bit deeper. I've plumbed up and it's shallow right close in, drops down a little bit, and I'm fishing on top of what is the next drop off. And I say drop off, the drop off's only a couple of inches, but these fish tend to cruise up and down, slightly away from the margins, but on that next little shelf here at Woodlands, and this is where we tend to pick the better fish up. So I plumbed up that line obviously, which I've just started on. It's always a good point to start on. I've fed out at 11 metres, which is in a deeper part of the lake, and then later on in the session we're going to try and get fish up in the water and catch a few shallow. I've also fed tighten the margins, and I'm going to keep feeding them regularly through the day. And because we're pleasure fishing, I feel that we'll get some nice fish in those margins, maybe some proper big lumps if we're really lucky. Tactics today, feed-wise, is just basically hard pellets. It's what the fish get fed on in matches, and so that's going to give us the best chance of catching fish, and of course avoiding what today will be the nuisance fish, the roach and the stuff like that. We still get little roach nibbling at the pellets and stuff, but I'm feeding 6mm pellets, fishing an 8mm pellet on the hook. You don't have to go out far out, like we've said earlier on, and what I do see a lot of the pleasure anglers, and they're on it today, they set up a waggler or whatever, and they just chuck out, cast out as far as they can, when really the majority of the fish this time of year are on this line from sort of 5 metres to 10 metres, because weekends come, and when the matches are on, and there's matches pretty much on every lake on here on weekends, that is where the anglers fish. So this is where the fish get fed. So they're going to live here, and that's where they expect to pick up bait. So if you're coming down pleasure fishing, whether you're fishing on a waggler or a pole, really you want to be fishing quite close in, because that's going to give you the better chance of catching fish. One of the reasons behind using a pole, obviously when you're fishing short, you can control what you're doing. You can lift the float, drop it. If you get a line bite, you're not striking, winding in and casting back out again. You've got total control of the distance you fish, because you'll hold it in the same place every time. And as we said earlier, when you're plumbing up and you're looking for little dips and little plateaus that you want to fish on where these fish will feed, it's quite important that you're dropping the bait down the same place every time where they're comfortable feeding. So the pole has massive advantages in that respect. These carp live here constantly at this sort of distance. They're used to the bait, and so all you want to do is really attract a few fish in at a time. There's masses of fish in this place, as like most commercials. So the last thing you want, and especially it's more important this time of the year, the last thing you want is to put a load of bait in, and then you've got loads of fish come in, and all they're doing is grubbing about on the bottom, your floats dotting about everywhere, you strike, you foul hook, and you just disturb your swim, and it's really difficult to hook fish properly. So the tactic is feed 4, 5, 6 pellets at a time, quite regular. That noise attracts the fish in. Not hordes of them, just odd 1, 2 or 3 at a time. And hopefully, when they put their heads down, following them pellets down, they'll see just a few pellets on the lake bed, yours among it. They pick yours up, you get your bite, and the fish is hooked properly. And even those tactics can get you quite a lot of fish in the peg, and I seem to be having a few in the peg at the moment, so I'm going to cut out feeding just for a while, probably a minute or so, and see if that gets me a bite. Because I know there's fish there, the float's bobbing about. It could be just at the roach, but I've got a feeling there's carp down there. In fact, I know there's carp down there. Well, we're in again on this short line. I don't think this one knows he's hooked yet. Plodding about. Another nice fish. Oh, a proper fish. setup I've got. It's only a number 12 elastic, it's quite soft. It tends to be the way with carp fishing these days on the pole. Use a softer elastic because you don't have to pull the carp that hard. The harder you pull at a carp, the harder it'll pull back, and that goes to a lot of big fish. So we're just playing this gently. He's wallowing about. If I was to really try and bully this fish, it would set off, I'm sure. He's not ours yet, mind. But he is a good one. Oh, and he's in the net. Whoa, and that is a lump of a fish. He's gonna go straight in the keep now. We'll have a look at him later. That's a proper fish. Smile. Oh my goodness. Is that as good as a swale chub? It isn't far off. It's giving me just as much pleasure, I can tell you today. That is a proper lump. And I can see why them commercial anglers love coming to places like this. Gives you a right buzz. Let's see if we can get another one. Yeah, we're in again. What a pleasure it is playing these fish on this pole. Handling them with ease, gotta say. This is just a nice mirror. This is probably the sort of size that the marksmen like to catch every cast. Proper weight builders. And I love the sound of that tail flapping on the water as I'm playing them. If you can see a smile, it's because I'm enjoying this. And I've got to say, thanks to those rain gods, because if it hadn't have been flooded on the rivers, we probably wouldn't have come here today. But it's been the perfect excuse. Pop him in the net. And let's get another one. And we're in again. This is giving me so much pleasure catching these fish. I've got to be honest, whoa, here he goes, that most of my fishing is what we call natural venues. And a lot of the natural venue lads frown on this sort of fishing. They don't call it proper fishing. Well, to me, any fishing is proper fishing. It's just a pleasure catching fish. Just to know you can, bit cheesy this one, but outwit a fish. And my missus says, what's good about outwitting a fish? Well, I can tell you, any fish that you can boss like this. Oh, get him in the net before he realises. Yeah, any fish you can fool into taking your hook bait. It doesn't matter whether it's a commercial carp or it's roach in a canal. Any fishing is proper fishing to me. And another beauty about the pole fishing, you can gently encourage that fish towards your landing net. And as you probably saw from that, once it was in the net, it went scatty because you're just teasing them towards you and they don't realise what's going on until it's too late. When you're fishing a rod and line, you have that problem where you're fighting direct to the fish and it does pull back a bit more. It is exciting, mind. That's all fishing is. It is easier to land a bigger fish on a pole, and that's another reason why the match anglers use a pole. It's much more efficient. Well, we seem to have got a good group of fish interested now on our short line, which is pretty much as I expected. The feeding little and often seems to have paid off, where we're just encouraging a few fish into the swim at a time. And it's not taking as long to get a bite now. I must emphasise, especially with the pleasure anglers that I see when I'm out fishing anywhere really, the emphasis is on getting the bait in regular, because the minute you stop feeding, the fish clear up whatever you've put in and they'll go out looking elsewhere for food. But if you keep going in regular with your bait, and when you're fishing commercials especially, where there's a lot of fish, you're looking at feeding every 30 seconds really, up to a minute, you know. Just keep little amounts of bait going in regular, and that'll keep fish in your swim. Right, we're going to show you how to plumb up, or how I plumb up anyway. First of all, you need a good heavy plummet. It's very important you get a heavy plummet. The hook goes in the cork at the bottom, and as you can see there, nice flat bed on the bottom of that plummet. That's going to give us a very accurate reading when we go to plumb up. Right, so process of plumbing. We talked earlier about how I was fishing just on this top shelf. Well, I'm going to just go out slightly and test it there, lowering it very slowly, and you can see my plummet's on the bottom there, so that's known as dead depth. So you can just see, if I lower it down, you'll just see the float stop suddenly. That's the plummet hitting the bottom there. Let go and it's still there, you see, like that. I'll come in a little bit, and this is very important when you're fishing close in. Try it again. You see it's slightly shallower there. See, the whole body of the float is sticking out. Come in a little bit more, hitting the bottom there. We've got another inch shallower. and so on. We've just got a nice little slope. It's not too sudden. As you can see, where the float is, closer we come in, the more that float is sticking out. And we get right to the end of the keep net, and you can see there's a depth variation from my top 4 of my pole to the top 2 of the pole of probably round about 5 inches. So I want to fish, if I just get the float out, because I'm going to shallow it up and show you. When we're fishing for these carp, the optimum depth for me, I believe, is when the plummet, should I say, hits the bottom. So your float hits the bottom, sits like that. You come up to the surface of the water. So my thumb will be the surface of the water, and I want to fish. So the bristle and just that eye and the very top shoulder of the body of the float is just stuck above the water. So that means when my float settles to about there, my pellet is laid flat on the bed of the lake. And that's absolutely perfect presentation for when you're doing this sort of method. If you have too much line laid on the bed of the lake, then you find you get a lot of foul-hooked fish. It is difficult when you've got a lot of carp in your swim to avoid foul-hooked fish, but you foul-hook less if you're fishing dead depth. And we need to fish dead depth when we're fishing with bigger pellets, because to be honest, a pellet, an 8mm pellet will just drag that float under. So that's the optimum depth for me. So I'll put this back on now, and I want to set up in the swim that we're fishing just above where the deepest part is, because that's where the fish tend to feed. And just where it starts to rise up, and as we've seen, it's only that much, just where it starts to rise up, that's where these fish see them pellets, and that's where they feed. Unlike when you've got deep drop-offs and flat, they'll feed at the bottom. These on that little slope, they'll just feed on there. So now we're going to plumb it up absolutely bang on to where I want it. You can see there, that to me is probably about 2.5 inches too deep. So we'll bring her in, and how I move my float, I put my thumbnail right on the shoulder of where that is, and I reckon about 2.5 inches, probably about that. We'll go out and check it again, because it is really important to get this bang on, in my opinion anyway. And that's on the deck there. I'm just probably, I know this sounds a bit crucial, but I'm probably slightly shallow by a couple of mils. So opposite way, when I want to go deeper, I put my thumb on the line at the bottom of the float there, and we lift it up, and that should be bang on to where I want it. And as I've just described, we're fishing just on this really tiny gradual slope. And there we have it. Right on that shoulder, look, it's just resting there. And what I've done, if Chappie gets it right here, I put a little Tipex mark on my pole. Because we're fishing on just a real slight slope, if I go too far out with my pole, my float will sink. If I come too far in, we're too deep. So I put this Tipex mark on my pole there, and I'll sit with that, my knee, it'll sit on the end of my knee, and we're absolutely bang on there. So that's my tip for plumbing up in this particular case. And same applies to the margins. Fish it absolute dead depth. Well, we're in again. Starting to catch a few now. Sun's out. All in all, a nice pleasant day. I'll just draw this in. Not a really big one, but still giving me a run around. I'm going to show you the puller bung now. As we're drawing the fish in close, I've got a bung on there, a puller, as you can see. We just draw a bit of elastic in, I put my thumb on it to stop it going back up the pole, and this tightens your elastic up, enables you to get the fish under control in front of you. And really a puller bung, be it a side puller or one up the end of your top kit, is essential with the lighter elastics. Otherwise you just lose control and you won't get the fish in. This one's playing nicely and coming in lovely. And there you go. Net the fish, let go of your elastic, it goes back up the pole. And you land the fish with ease. No panic, nice and smooth. And another woodlands carp in the landing net. Another nice little woodlands carp. Right, let's take a look at the rigs that we're using. Really simple. And we'll set off with this rig that I've been fishing close in with. We'll start with the hook. It's a Guru QM1 size 16 hook, and I've got a bait band tied onto a loop at the back of it. I don't know whether you can pick up how I've done that, but we tie quite a decent sized loop with the band in it, put the knot just at the back of the eye, and then whip it with a knotless knot. And I put the first whip in just in front of the knot that's on the loop holding the band, and then go behind that and then whip down as far as you can. And that, if Chappie can get a close up on that, that holds that line loop that's holding the band on the back of the hook, giving a really good presentation, and it helps stop that band wrapping round in the bend of the hook. Right, the hook length is 0.16 and it's 6 inches long, and that takes us to an 0.18 main line, and the float I'm using is just a 4x12 float, but I'll show you the shotting, and I regard this as pretty important really. I've got 3 shot, 2 number 8, let me just get that on there, 1 number 10 there, coming up, number 8, number 8, spread out. And the reason behind that is, as I'm feeding 4, 5, 6 pellets at a time on that short line, they're going, I want my pellet to fall in a similar fashion to what the loose feed is doing. So often I shall put 3 or 4 pellets in, a few pellets, and then I'll lift the rig and lower it down. And then of course, with that being so light at the bottom end, then that pellet will fall naturally with the loose feed. Going up from the shot, as I've said, there's my 4 number 12 float that I've had just made for what I do really, purposely made for me. They're not a model that you buy off the shelf, and I have these with a little tube through the body. And the reason I do that is when I'm fishing for big carp like we're getting the odd one today, as I'm putting pressure on, the line doesn't cut through the body on that. So that's a really good method, that if you can pick up floats like that I think there are some available, but don't ask me where. So above the float I've got probably 16 inches of line, which is a fairly long lash as we call it, but I prefer it that way. It means I can, if I want to, slap that float in, which sometimes induces a bite when I've got that bit of a long lash on. Elastic wise, I've got a number 12 solid elastic, and I prefer solid elastic to hollow. You tend to have a lot more control playing the fish on the hollow one. They don't run off as quickly. I know that your hollow elastics, the initial strike is nice and soft on the fish and they don't tend to bolt, but once they start going they're difficult to slow down. But with a solid elastic I find that's quite easily to take control of them pretty quickly. So that's my rig for fishing short. I'll just show you how I put a pellet onto the band. There's two ways of doing it, and the quickest way, that's providing you've got a decent thumbnail, which you do need it for this. Take the band, lay it at the centre of the pellet, put your thumbnail on it, and then just pull the band around like so, and that just pops it straight onto the pellet. The other way of putting a pellet on is to use this little gizmo here, and that's your band expander. So it'll expand the band like so. So then all you do, put your pellet in, release, and then pull it off, and you've got the same thing, your band on the centre of that. Another tip for you as well, when you're fishing banded pellet, after you've hooked a fish or as you're drawing in, it's a good idea to keep changing the pellets, because you really want your pellet in its new form, still nice and dry as it goes in. Right, let's get on to the bait I'm using. I'm using Fishery 6mm and 8mm pellets, and as with the majority of coarse fisheries, commercial fisheries, they ask you to use their own pellets. The fish are used to them, so I'm fine with that. So what we've got here, those are the 8s, those are the 6s. I'm feeding the 6s on my short line, and I tend to put an 8 on the hook, banded on the hook. That usually picks a better fish out. But that's not always necessarily the case. I've caught a few good fish when I couldn't get a bite on the 8s, went to the 6s, and obviously you're matching the hatch, if you like, down there, and I had a run of fish on the 6s. Now something I do a little bit different, I'll just pop them to one side. I do have my own hookers that I flavour myself, and what these are 6mm wafters, and they're a bit sticky. If you have a look in there, they've been soaked and marinated in CSL liquid. These work really well when the going's a bit tough. I've not had them out today to use them because it's been pretty straightforward fishing for us, but if you're struggling for a bite, a good tip is you get some of this stuff, CSL, leave them to soak. Probably those have been soaking for 2 weeks, those, but you can get away with them soaked overnight even, but they do take on all the liquid. Those were covered, put them in a little jar like that, and those were covered, and those pellets have taken in all that liquid. So when they go in the water, you'll get the liquid, which is a real sweet flavour. Then all that flavouring again will just slowly seep out. Take my word for it, they do work. Just for a bit of fun, I'm just going to put a shallow rig out I'm going to chuck a couple of 8mm pellets in, slap that rig over it and see if we can't get one. Normally I'd be doing this out at 11, 13, 14 metres. That's pretty much your standard way of fishing shallow, but I'm just doing this because it's a little pleasure session. I'm just doing it just to see if we can get a reaction. So what I'm doing by slapping this rig here, I'm going to show you the rig later, but I'm trying to mimic just a few pellets going in the water. If Chappie can pick it up the footage wise when I slap maybe next time. I've got one anyway. And that just shows you how effective that method can be. When the sun comes out, the fish move up, and obviously I've been regular feeding, loose feeding, little and often, that's brought those fish off the deck. But the bend in that pole, it's just absolutely brilliant. I'm putting loads of pressure onto this fish because he's trying to do me in the boards, and it just shows you the benefit of a power kit and the strength of the CP 2000 itself. And of course, I'm on this side puller now. We'll see if we can get a look at it. I'm not going to pull too hard at it, because after all I'm pleasure fishing, so I'm just enjoying it. But it does feel half decent. And what a brilliant day it has been this so far. Really enjoying it. Ultimately, what I've done by coming shallow here, I've taken advantage of the conditions we've got today. Sun's come out, it's got warmer as the day's progressing, and those fish have come up. So you really have to take advantage of that situation. We've just put this little that shallow rig on, and straight away, absolutely instantly, we've got this fish. As we've said a few times earlier on, keep ringing those changes, whether it be out long, out short, two different lines. Obviously we've got margins to have a look at yet. And for a little experiment, slapping our rig down at 5 metres, it's turned out quite well, this one. I think this one's been on steroids, you don't want to give up. We'll keep altering the angle that we're playing the fish, because you don't want him pulling the same direction all the time, because that's when they get the advantage, and you don't want them doing that. You want to keep in control of it all the time. And as I've said before, I'm really loving this. In fact, you could say it's carp fun in the summer sun. And you can't beat that. And there you go. Woohoo! Don't you just love it? A nice common carp. Shallow. Can't beat it. Right, let me just show you this slapping rig. Very, very simple. You might have noticed when I was catapulting pellets out earlier, I was catapulting them out in threes, and that is done for a specific reason. As you can see, I've got a pellet on there, big 8mm. I've got a triple bulk of number 8 stots, and then when I'm slapping I like to use a dibber, and I think Chappie's going to take some footage and show you exactly how that works in the water, because when I slap that, that's going to hit the water, and in theory it should have 3 splashes, and that's going to mimic what my pellets have been doing when I've been catapulting 3 pellets out. And so a good tip for you there, when you're going to fish shallow and you're going to slap, 3 8mm pellets, and then set your rig up like this, slap it on, you'll get the 3 slaps. Those fish are used to 3 pellets going in at a time, and they're going to nail that pretty quickly. Some of you might have noticed I've been constantly feeding this down the edge line while I've been fishing, just so I've got that other line to fish, so I can give that a rest. Now this line in matches is normally saved for the sort of last hour, but which also is applicable to when you're pleasure fishing. But I'm giving it a go now, just solely to give that other line a rest. I mean, there might be fish moved into it, maybe not. I'm getting little indications, but that might be just small fish. But we'll give it 10 minutes and see, because this is a line that catches you some of those big lumps that really that's what we've come for. Oh, that looked a lump there as it come up, didn't it? Well, that certainly paid off. I find that very interesting, coming early on that line, and I've got one. We had a few little indications which I assumed were just small fish, but I think it's quick intake of breath there, because he's trying to get under them boards. I need another section on there. Oop. Just to play him away from the boards, because these boards, they have holes in them and the carp tend to run in under them, and then you do lose them, but got him out safely now. But yeah, back to the shock of hooking that. We've gone down the edge, and that's my first put in. Like I said earlier, I've been feeding it all through the session so far. I wasn't really expecting to catch one this early on. They're usually later on in the day when they're moving, but I've got one, and like I said, the benefits of altering your lines is it gives one line a rest, and that short line has been hammered with all those carp we got off it. So I'm just going to enjoy this play. I'm enjoying this really good, and this pole really stands up to it lovely. I don't think we'd have any problem whatsoever, should I say, playing big lumps of a carp up to good double figures, you know. The carp with the pole with the power kitting really does the job. Can't seem to get him to want to come away from swimming up and down that edge. Get him out to go out into the middle of the lake, or towards the middle of the lake. I can ship back a bit. But it really is fun. These are good. Got him down to the top kit now, That means I can use my puller bung, and that just really stops these fish in the tracks. Tighten the elastic up, got total control over it, and straight away I can get him into the net. It was that just that initial run where I had to put an extra section on. Then of course, when they're trying to get back in your own bank, it's too dangerous an effort to try and get to your top kit too quick, because they will fly under them boards. Really happy with that one. My first one down the edge today. Not massive, but I'm sure they will get bigger, those edge fish, as the session goes on. And there you go, further proof that you don't need to go too far out to catch these carp. 6 inches from the bank. Now if that isn't handy fishing, what is? And don't forget, keep feeding the lines that you're going to fish. That'll give you options. We've got our inside line, we've got a longer line which we haven't even tried yet, and this line. But all the time you're fishing, like we said earlier in the video, keep feeding, because that's the difference between catching just a few fish and a proper netful. Right, I'll just lower that in. You might notice that the rig down the edge is the same rig as what I was using fishing my top 4. The depth is slightly different, but the setup is the same. And that's with the pellet dead depth again, so we avoid foul hooking, or eliminate as much as possible the foul hooking of those carp, because the last thing you want to do is foul hook too many, because they'll spook away and your swim will die on you. And we're in. Only a small one, I think. Oh, maybe not. What you're trying to do when you play a fish, your main objective and goal is to get it under control, and this involves all sorts of tactics. If you can steer the fish, keep swirling it around, moving it about, then you'll land it a lot quicker. And sometimes that involves holding the pole in the air like I'm doing now, because the fish, you're trying to get him to take a gulp of air. If he comes on the surface, you've got him half beat anyway. Other times they'll set off in one direction. This isn't doing it, but I'll show you what I mean. We can drop the pole down and that will steer the fish in another direction. If you can keep that fish altering its direction all the time, you can't get that momentum to run on you. So you'll be holding it and controlling it exactly where you want it. This one's now being made dizzy with me demonstrating that for you. And once they're like that, they're ready for landing. And he ain't a bad fish. You'll be happy catching them one every 10 minutes. Or I would anyway. And there you go, a margin monster. Maybe next one will be. Right, we've caught from the left hand side. I'm just going to have a put in on the other side now. This side I fed differently. On this one I'm going to see if it makes any difference. What I've done on this side is I put a load of bait in and I've just left it. Probably a good big cupful of 6mm pellets and a handful of 8mm, and it's just been left for an hour. So I'm just lowering it in now. See if it brings us anything. Bit of an indication. And there you go. And that side is pretty much how you would feed a near side edge, a margin in a match. Put plenty of bait in, leave it, and then go on it. So that's worked all right. Not a massive fish, but, or am I getting a bit unkind to these fish? It's another good carp, and as we've said before, it's proper fishing. Let's have him straight in the net, controlled perfectly, using that top kit with the puller bung in. And again, the fight model. you wouldn't like to be in a cage with this one, I tell you. And that's not bad for the first put in on that line. Pretty instant. Got me a fish on here, and we're going to call this last fish of the day. And I've got to say, I've really enjoyed this session, and it's what I call proper fishing. Oh, he's going for the boards. I'm sure these fish live under them boards, and I'm feeling proper benefits of the puller bung here. Look at the bend in that pole. That shows you the pressure this pole can take. I don't know if Chappie got that or not, but we're practically playing this on equivalent of a bit of 6-inch power gum now. So I want to try and stop it going in these boards. It's been trying to get under these boards, but we've got him now. It's not massive, but it's one of those commons, and they tend to fight really hard, those commons. But I think we've got him now. Yeah, he's eased off a bit now. Here he comes. What a shock he got. And what a great way to end this session. Really hard fighting common. I'll pop him in the net with the others, and we'll see what we've got. Well, what a fantastic catch of summertime carp, all caught to the simplest of pole tactics. And thanks for watching. Absolutely brilliant.